We got the story from the Wall Street Journal. Hunter Biden's guilty verdict. The president's son faces the consequences of unlawful acts. And the question is this legitimate? Will this affect Joe Biden's polling? And how much do people really care? Well, it is big news because I believe, is this the first time a family member of a president has been
It's the first time the child of a sitting president has gone before a criminal court and been convicted.
Wow. Why? Like, what is the reason, the real reason? So you've got many people on the right arguing this is a distraction. Joe Biden is sacrificing his son for optics to make it look like they're not biased. Because certainly as the head of the executive branch, he could tell his DOJ, don't go that direction, and they wouldn't. I suppose the issue then is there's concern that appears that the system is biased. So Joe Biden says, okay, Hunter, you've been a thorn in my side for too long. You're going to prison.
It's possible. He has another case. Hunter Biden has another case coming up in California. He's got tax evasion charges there. And that case goes forward in September, I believe. So there is a level of like he may be being sacrificed. On the other hand, maybe they thought by getting this out of the way, it would sort of help him in other cases. Maybe they could skirt some other stuff on the rug. If you guys remember his plea deal, that was the big part of it, just trying to make it as easy for Hunter Biden, who's now facing basically 25 years in prison and like a $750,000 fine.
Yeah.
Contrast that with Trump, who's facing up to 4 years in prison.
I think it was 25 years per charge, and he's got three charges.
It's not per charge. It's two charges have maximum sentence of 10 years each, and one charge is a 5-year maximum. So up to 25 years in prison.
I suppose the root question is, should crackheads be allowed to own guns? I say yes.
I mean, if they're not on crack and they're not wielding it at the same moment, if you're on crack wielding a gun, that's
presented by his attorney Abe Lowell was basically like, well, he wasn't currently on crack at that moment, so it seems fine.
No. But that's about lying on the ATF form. So basically what Hunter Biden was charged with is that you get this federal background check form, and Democrats are all about their background checks.
Takes forever.
It takes like 15 minutes.
The form, yeah. Well, it took me with Daniel Turner as a name. It took me almost an hour waiting for the call back to say, all right, you're good.
Oh, well, to be fair, my first gun purchase took 5 days. Or it took 3 days, the maximum wait. They basically just didn't press it, and then the law releases it, and you can buy your gun. But there's a question on it saying that they ask you on the form, are you a user of an illicit or controlled substance? And Hunter Biden said no. But he was. We all know that he was. My thing is kind of like, I agree. A lot of people have pointed out, and these are like hardcore Trump supporters who have every reason to just say lock all the Bidens up, have outright said this violates the Fifth Amendment. That this is unconstitutional. And that's actually what the defense argued, because it forces an individual to self-incriminate. This case with Hunter Biden, if they're going to appeal this, it's a federal case. If this ends up before the Supreme Court, thanks to Hunter Biden, could overturn federal background checks.
Not the figurehead the Second Amendment movement thought they needed.
I'll take it.
As his father is in Atlanta talking about gun control and that awful statistic, which is a flat out lie, that more children die from guns than cancer and car accidents combined, but they define children up until 21 years of age. So yeah, it's kind of ironic that this is happening all on the exact same day, and no one at the White House pulled the plug and said, maybe we shouldn't be talking about gun control right now.
I think we should see, as many conservative organizations and gun rights organizations file briefs on behalf of Hunter Biden for his defense, that, look, if you are on crack with a gun on your person, then that's like being behind the wheel of a car. Like, if there was a guy, for just hypothetically, was chewing on a speedball behind the wheel of an SUV, and the cops had to drag him out of the car, kicking and screaming, and then hold him on the ground, I mean, that's a guy who's committing very serious crimes, and resisting arrest and all that stuff. Very serious outcomes could come from something like that. Hunter Biden, if he was actively doing crack with the gun on him, I'd understand arresting him and saying, like, you are using a controlled substance while in possession of a weapon. That should be a specific crime. But I actually don't agree. If you're a gun owner and you don't have a gun on you, but your gun's like in your house somewhere and you are out gallivanting about on crack, I don't believe you should be charged with owning a gun for that reason. It seems kind of weird. You weren't wielding the gun while on crack. You're just doing crack somewhere else. If you get charged for doing crack, which is a felony, they can then, after you're convicted, say, and now as a felon, you relinquish your right to your guns. That I agree with. But I think this should be a major attack vector for 2A rights organizations because it puts Democrats in an awkward position. If all of the right wing and Republican and gun advocacy groups come out in defense of Hunter Biden, they're going to have to agree or pitch Hunter Biden into the pit.
Is your position because it's the Second Amendment specifically, or self-incrimination writ large? Meaning, what's
That's the Fifth Amendment.
Well, what's the difference? No, the Second Amendment, that this is because because of the right to bear arms.
Well, you said self-incrimination, which is a separate thing.
No, but are you concerned about this? Or let me rephrase: are you concerned about this because it's a Second Amendment issue and the right to bear arms is sacrosanct? And I agree with that. But is what's the difference between what Hunter Biden did and when you come back into the country and they say, do you have this in your possession? Aren't you self-incriminating to a certain extent? Do you have any apples? Do you have any fruit? Do you have any wine that you say, well, why do I have to tell you?
As an American citizen?
How is that different than Hunter Biden having to say on a form, are you taking crack? Are you a crackhead? And he's like, nope. Are you bringing in more than $10,000? Nope.
I think
what's the difference on lying on the form?
So it's a question of morality, and it's not a question of straight blanket logic of you never have to tell the government anything at any point. I think border security, if you leave the country and you're operating outside of the United States, coming back in, it's reasonable to say, as you now enter our legal jurisdiction, we want to make sure that these things, are controlled for very specific reasons. But it is a good argument. When it comes to re-entering the country, U.S. citizens, they're not supposed to make you take a picture or fingerprint or anything like that.
You do all the time now.
Well, I don't. I mean, I haven't flown internationally in a couple of years now, several years. But the last time I did, when I came in on the international line, all the non-citizens are getting their hands scanned and their pictures taken, and not me. I walked up, they said passport, I had an American passport. They looked through it and they said, what were you doing in insert country? And I was like, X, Y, and Z. Welcome back to America. And I was like, here, and then that's it. So the idea as an American citizen, you have constitutional rights. They can't do these things to you. But it is an interesting question. I think it's a question of morality. And it really comes down to what is the reason why we don't want someone to come in with fruit and livestock and animals because it will spread disease and cause serious harm and damage. And so we've agreed like, hey, man, don't bring that into our house. Question of morals.
So then what's the reason that we don't want crackheads to have guns? Because it's the same as...
Oh, I want crackheads to have guns. I just don't want them on crack and with a gun at the same time.
Gotcha.
I think... the question is, like alcohol, right? That's legal. But if you're drunk and with a gun, you're going to go to jail. You're going to get arrested and then take your gun away from you. So I view crack similarly. I don't like it that people are doing crack. And I understand, I'm fairly libertarian on drugs and all these substance abuse laws. I don't think they're solving any of these problems. Not that I think we should completely legalize everything, but my attitude is, forcing you on a background check form to admit to committing felonies, I think, is very, very different from admitting you have an orange in your pocket, which I think at worst is a fine.
What was the actual question on the thing that he said he wasn't?
It's not a question. I'm sorry. It asks you. So it is a question, but it says, are you... do any of the following apply? And it's like, you are a user of illicit substance or something like that.
So it might have been like 3 days since he'd used, and he's like, well, I haven't done that thing for 3 days. I'm in the clear.
11 days. And that was part of his defense's argument, that he didn't think of himself as an addict, partially because, some people don't accept that they're addicted to substances, but also he had been sober for the 11 days before leading up to it. So therefore he was not currently addicted to anything.
And then as soon as he got it, he's texting about being on crack or whatever.
He immediately went out to find drugs, so I guess he wasn't planning on staying sober. It was definitely a really interesting argument. I mean, the other thing that I find interesting about this case is, Andy No had a video of a woman protesting outside of the courthouse today, and she was saying, when I got in trouble for gun and substance-related charges, they threw the book at me. They were really harsh. It changed my whole life. He needs to be held accountable, because this is really the question I think a lot of Americans, I think the 2A things are interesting, and I think some people feel them really strongly, but the other part is he getting special treatment as the son of the president? A lot of Americans struggle with addiction. A lot of Americans are involved with the legal system because of that. Does he get a pass that other people don't?
Well, he shouldn't. He shouldn't, but like you said, this is the first time that the son of a sitting president was ever charged with anything, a felony, I think, at the point. The thing is about the illicit, what is it?
3 of them.
3 at once.
Yeah.
Is the illicit argument is like, are you using illicit? It's like some people have medical marijuana cards or just
Answer is
taking
yes.
marijuana. What's that?
Answer is yes. Yeah,
Yes, what?
Marijuana is illegal federally.
That's exactly my point. It's a Schedule 1 narcotic, according to the federal government, but some states are like, yo, it's medicine. And so if you're in a state where it's legal, but then the federal government's like, hey, you lied on your federal background check when you said you didn't take illicit drugs. Like, what kind of conundrum? So that could be, this case could send more people into like arresting people because they have a small amount of pot in
Ian,
their house.
Perhaps, but there is no prescription crack. So,
Yeah.
so not in this case.
Well, it's the illicit part. It's just
Right. There's crack is only illicit.
you might be able to defend your gun rights because you're like, well, I do have a medical marijuana card. But even in states where you don't have a medical card, but it's just like decriminalized,
The moment
people
you
have
get,
it, it's not federally illegal.
This is the big trick. The moment you get a marijuana card, you can't own a gun. This is wild.
That is really, really
It's
dirty.
a fact. The moment, yep. And I remember I was in California 10 years ago walking down Venice Boardwalk, and there's people standing outside these weed shops going, like, weed card. And the guy goes to me, and he's like, hey, man, you got your weed card? And I was like, nah. And he's like, but why not? And I was like, don't need it. And he's like, oh, but dude, come on. I know you got problems, right? You're hurting. I see you're a skateboarder, man. And I was like, yeah, my feet hurt all the time. He's like, oh, you need a weed card. And then I laughed. I was like, oh, okay, dude. And they were $5. If some kid, 18, 19-year-old kid was like, oh, okay, goes in, there's the doctor, and he says, I'm going to prescribe marijuana for your pain. The moment he gives you that card, you now have to admit on federal NICS forms, NICS, that you are a user of an illegal substance.
Well, some people will get the card but don't use it. I mean, it's an outlier case, probably, but there are times where people will have it, they'll use it for a short period of time and then stop using it, but their card persists for the year or whatever.
And you're going to go to buy a gun, and they're going to deny you. Their form's going to come back, and they're going to be like, you're on medicinal marijuana.
I think the law is hazy on that, like whether or not they can say, because you've got a medical marijuana card, you can't get a firearm, because sometimes I hear that it's okay, sometimes I hear it's not okay, but that's terrifying that that's the
I'll put it this way.
in regards to that.
If you have a medicinal marijuana card, I believe it's fair to say 99.9% chance you are smoking marijuana. When you fill out your background check form, I'm pretty sure it says in parentheses, marijuana is illegal. It specifically states it, actually. Let me see if I can pull up the form.
You're both pointing out something I think very important, even though we're talking about Hunter Biden, but just an argument about gun rights in general. Only the people like us are trying to comply with the law. The criminals don't do any of this crap, right? The criminals just buy guns and they kill each other, and all of our crimes in our major cities that is absolutely through the roof, regardless of FBI lying statistics. We're the ones who are like, am I allowed to do this when I have marijuana? Do I have to check Form B if I... And this is what's so stupid about gun laws. Only the compliant people comply, and everyone else who's a criminal, who is a threat, does not comply.
So here's what it says. We have it pulled up here. This is Form 4473. And it says, are you an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or any other controlled substance? Warning. The use or possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law regardless of whether it has been legalized or decriminalized for medicinal or recreational purposes in the state where you reside.
This is the federal background check form.
Thank you, Democrats.
So dirty, man. 1930, they made that stuff federally illegal.
Well, I got a legal challenge. You know how the federal government is suing Sheetz?
No.
You guys heard the story?
Yeah.
So Sheetz is a chain of gas stations, and it's like Wawa. You go in there, you can get a burrito or whatever.
Stop by there after work today.
It's delicious. It's great. And you get the pre-made milkshakes and all that good stuff. So apparently the federal government said that because they won't hire criminals, they're racist, which is a really interesting way.
Racist statement.
I know, but federal crime stats, right? Well, I'm going to go ahead and say, based off of that argument, federal background checks are racist and should be abolished for racism. This is interesting because if they're going to target Sheetz and say rejecting employees or prospective employees because of their criminal background, because it's racist, you could then take the argument the government has made and say, based on exactly what they're saying, if this form results in a disproportionate amount of black and brown people unable to get firearms, then the federal government must get rid of it under the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Boy, you wonder if NRA groups and Second Amendment groups are smart enough to be jumping onto this argument the way you're talking about it, because this could be the unraveling of so many unconstitutional gun laws that are always being talked about, and the fact that Hunter Biden is the advent of it is pretty ironic.
this is an area of law I was talking with a lawyer about. It has to say, and I wish I could pull up all the terms she was using, but if your law would implicate the race, there's a way to delineate whether or not the law is actually racist or it's not, but it just outlies a disproportionate amount of people of a specific race. There's two different ways, so it might not be, is my point. It might not be considered a racist law just because it impacts disproportionately.
Ian, if you try hard enough, anything really is a racist law in this country. I mean, that's what I have learned over the last couple of years. You can read race into anything. So hypothetically, if you just have to have a good enough lawyer, in my opinion, and I'm not a legal expert.
I see racism everywhere.
Yeah, we all do.
Those are the glasses I wear, and so just every conversation turns into a race one sooner or later. It's if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.